Watson gives an example. I'll read it to you. Gives an example of what he perceived as the fragmented dialogue wasn't getting anywhere. Because the book Cliché Archetype is better than Unsaid Media. At least it deals with the global theater of the 60s. Unsaid Media is really about the 50s. And so the terms and ideas in the book Cliché Archetype are really revolutionary or predates all of postmodernism that's coming. So he says, here's an example. This may not be literal, but an example. Watson says the cliché in all technologies are clichés. The cliché is an act of consciousness and an act of awareness. McLuhan says, in response, but the cliché is a storage system, a storage battery. Then Watson said, the cliché is probe. McLuhan responds, every time we employ cliché, we store up energy. Then Watson says, the successful cliché is a successful probe. McLuhan says, yes, the cliché is verbal coal, C-O-A-L, verbal oil, fossil fuel. Watson says, the failed cliché is a failed probe. McLuhan says, a great comic artist like James Joyce is a master at releasing the fossil energy of the cliché. Watson says, and if the cliché is an act of consciousness, then the technologies are modes of awareness. Then McLuhan says, for James Joyce, the clichés of language make up a vast hydroelectric system. Watson says the cliché is the unit of consciousness. McLuhan responds, Joyce is spinning his wake as a guide to technology. Watson says the cliché is a unit technology. So then Watson, that's the dialogue that he presents as an example. Then Watson writes, the polarization of these exchanges can hardly be missed, namely the cliché as active consciousness versus the cliché as fossilized psychic energy. Now for me, what Watson misses is that McLuhan is not saying something opposite. He's expanding on what Watson said. So if the cliché is an act of consciousness and an act of awareness, McLuhan knows that, so he gives an example. Your awareness includes retrieval or storage. Then Watson says the cliché is a probe. Then McLuhan says every time we employ cliché, we store up energy. So McLuhan's including an aspect of Watson's definition of cliché as active consciousness or active awareness. He's including words that Watson sees as not relevant to the word active awareness. So he thinks there's a problem. So when Watson says the failed cliché is a failed probe, a great comic artist as McLuhan by choice is a master at releasing the fossil energy of the cliché. He's saying the same thing as Watson. And then Watson says, and if the cliché is an act of consciousness, then the technologies are modes of awareness. McLuhan points that out by saying the clichés of language make up a vast hydroelectric system. So, because I've had a chance to read McLuhan from 30, 40 years past Watson, I'm more familiar with it. I can understand back in the 70s, Watson is a little confused. He's too inside the process. He can't see what McLuhan's doing. He can't see it's the same meaning translated into other words, which is the very process that Watson is trying to talk about, how language is tactile and changes things depending on the situation. Now, I don't know how much he took into that, but that's what I think about when we're talking. See, when we talk about pop art, you might think that's cliche, but it isn't. But normal people think, what I see here on the radio TV is cliche because I see it all the time, whereas I don't get to see the high art in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I might get there once in my lifetime. But the art in the museum, whether you got there to see it or not, is still cliche because it's spread by photograph and all kinds of other things. So it's always, you take a word and you say, okay, what's the word? Kurt Weller. What is Kurt Weller? Any definition of you'll bristle at, unless you're a fanatic about being defined and respected for some specialty you do. But if you don't, then you're not like that. You like to, it seems to me, to be undefinable. You don't even care if you're defined. You're still going to use language as probes and pop culture, like wall palms or whatever else we've talked about, as cliche probes to create awareness. So what's funny about language, and he does, Watson gets into this, that language lasts longer than any particular technology. McLuhan said technologies are like languages, but Watson's pointing out they wear out, and they're actually not as flexible as any technology. So the most flexible, they're not as flexible as any language, or as language itself. So language, it keeps going regardless of what technologies are happening and what changes technologies cause in language. Language is flexible, adapts, but it remains. So McLuhan defined language as a tactile medium, not verbal. That includes what you experience when you're talking and looking at someone. You're seeing the visuals, you're smelling them, and all the different sensory aspects. So language is the most perfect medium. The action of thought and brain and mouth, which also has body gesture. Any other technology is fragmentation of those aspects. Like you could say television and radio and the internet is a fragmentation of the ESP part of language. So if you and I were talking and looking at each other, you're picking up all kinds of symbols and interpreting what I mean. And I begin my essay, Cloning ESP, with this statement. You're merging and blocking with my meanings for all kinds of reasons. You could say there's a subtle process of thought or non-speech, non-verbality, or ESP, extra intuition, going on while interacting with someone. Whereas television takes that ESP quality and makes that the whole factor. And the simple way to say it makes us discarnate. It emphasizes the interior landscape more than the physical hardness of your external body. So I've said all that, and I just mean it to not really lead to a definition, though I'm approximating a definition as I talk. I'm leading to a meaning, but now I'll hear your response, which will probably distort the meaning I thought I was intending. And that interplay is what language is.
Right.
Like television, just to finish it, television, you couldn't talk back to it when it first happened. I can talk back to someone who's talking to me.
Right. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. With the ESP thing. It's like,
Jack?
Yes, Winky?
Oh, Jack, you're not being nice. I am a good photographer.
Your cousins don't agree with you.
Well, gee, Jack, I've got to learn how to take pictures somehow.
Yes, but look at the kind of pictures you take.
Well, maybe I'll become an automobile mechanic instead.
Automobile mechanic? Do you know anything about cars? Huh?